I mentioned Bright Memory last week in my video about upcoming games you should be more aware of. In that video, I gave a brief overview of what Bright Memory is, but I wanted to go into more depth about it and talk about the playable demo Bright Memory Chapter 1. Now, this game is a demo. It was originally sold as an early access build of the game, but is now being marketed more as a demo for the final release, Bright Memory Infinite. The game is $10 on Steam and GOG, and pre-ordering it gives you the Chapter 1 demo for free. As it's a demo, this isn't going to be a review about the final experience, which I will also review once it comes out. But, with it in mind that this is a demo, be aware that the story isn't complete, it doesn't go into a lot of what you are doing, and there are some performance issues. Cool? Cool. So, Bright Memory is what you get when you mix Uncharted with the Shadow Warrior reboot with an anime schoolgirl protagonist. And if that doesn't pique your interest, I don't know what will. You play as Shelia, a 21-year-old woman born into a military family. She lost her parents at a young age and has been trained to be the ultimate soldier, efficient in sword, gun, and possessing telekinetic abilities. Shelia is tasked with finding and stopping the organization Psi from finding and using two ancient swords with the ability to rise and control the dead. Through the use of experimental teleportation technology, she finds herself on the floating island above the North Pole, and this is where your journey begins. The demo doesn't really tell you all this, and this comes from the description on Steam, but the demo does have some brief cutscenes to set the episode and has dialogue during gameplay to give some extra context to your actions. The gameplay really is a mix of Uncharted and Shadow Warrior. The Uncharted elements come in play in the narrative focus. Shelia talking to herself while she performs tasks, the linearity of the level design, and collection of various relics hidden in different places. Many of the set pieces would feel right at home in Uncharted, with lush forests, serene waterfalls, and desolate ruins. The relics are all ancient artifacts that you find hidden throughout the world that you can pick up and inspect, similar to that in Uncharted as well. There are also puzzles, which are very reminiscent of the Uncharted games. In the demo there is only one, but I can imagine the final release will have several different puzzles of increasing difficulty. The Shadow Warrior element comes in with the combat. The game is a first-person shooter with a heavy focus on melee sword combat. You get 3 different guns, an assault rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, all which function exactly as you would expect. And then you have your sword, which can perform quick combos with 3 different types of slashes, and then you have your telekinetic powers. These powers do different things, like making enemies float in the air, which gives you an opening to perform flashy aerial combos. You can freeze time or create energy fields around you which deal massive damage. You also have a Devil May Cry-esque style bar on the side of your screen encouraging you to perform more and more extreme combos. Some of the other features include a Doom Eternal style dash, which is useful for evading attacks as well as moving in closer to enemies for better attacking positions, a grappling hook, which is used for platforming sections as well as pulling yourself towards enemies, and a health regen system instead of health packs. You also gain experience from killing enemies, which is used to upgrade yourself and give you new abilities. So now that I got the technical discussion out of the way, let's talk about what I liked, didn't like, and hope they improve for the release of Bright Memory Infinite. I liked the overall feel of combat. The guns feel good and responsive, the different telekinetic abilities are all fun to use. Movement is fluid, and the dash mechanic is an appreciated feature. I felt the upgrade costs were fair. The sword is fun to use and adds a nice level of flair and flashiness to combat. When you're in sync, using all of the different game mechanics, switching between your abilities, guns, and sword to pull off some fast, crazy combos, the game just feels great and makes you feel like a badass. I like the enemy variety as well. The game starts you off fighting generic nameless, faceless soldier types, but quickly has you fighting different animals and monsters. These monsters are pretty cool looking and have different attack patterns that require different strategies to defeat. Their designs are inspired by Chinese mythology. Graphically, the game is stunning as well. Some of the set pieces are just very nice to look at. The environment details rival that of some AAA games. Again, it's a really impressive feat for a game made by only one person. And there's a turtle. 10 out of 10. That said, the facial animations look a bit stiff and lifeless, Shelia's hair doesn't quite look the same quality as the environment, and Shelia's school uniform costume has some serious skirt malfunctions. Pantsu shots. Hopefully, these minor graphical issues are fixed for the final release. It's not the biggest deal in the world, especially since the game is in first person, but it's still a thing.
A person? I have a bad feeling.
The voice acting isn't the best, but it's not bad either. It features 3 different recorded languages: English, Japanese, and Chinese. All of them sound good, but the Chinese option I felt was mixed a little too quiet. The music is also pretty decent and dynamic when in combat. I also liked that there were some boss fights in this demo. They didn't require too much strategy, and they really just came down to shooting bullet sponges, but they offered some more intense fights to test your dodging skills and really push you to perform better combos. So now let's get into what I didn't like. The linearity of the game was a little too restrictive. Now, I like linear games, and I think linearity actually helps some games, and that being too open can be a detriment for certain types of games. Bright Memory is that type of game that I think benefits from linearity, but I also think it can be a little too restrictive. Certain areas look like you should be able to jump to or walk to them, and you can't. There's invisible walls, or you just fall and die. It would have been cool to see these areas a little more open for secret hunting, kind of like in Doom Eternal. Instead, you can't really explore. The collectibles are just kind of tucked away into corners of rooms instead. I'm also not a fan of the health regen system. The combat feels very at home for a game like Doom or, like I mentioned, Shadow Warrior, and I was disappointed to see a regen system instead of a health point health pack system. I think it would have been better implemented to gain health from killing enemies, similar to how you already get ammo and XP in the game, with health packs littered throughout the level. But I think a regen system just takes some forward momentum away from the combat and encourages retreating to wait and heal instead of pushing forward and staying aggressive. Also, despite how fluid the gunplay and swordplay feel, I feel the floating abilities need some tweaking. It just seemed inconsistent. Sometimes monsters would just fall immediately, other times they'd float for a while. It seemed like you need to be positioned very specifically to pull off long floating moves, and sometimes enemies would catch level geometry and it would just ruin a floating combo. This became especially apparent when I was trying to get the achievement for floating an enemy for 15 seconds. It took me many tries to do it, and I'm still not quite sure what I did differently once I actually did get the achievement. Another thing I didn't like was that basic sword attacks are on a cooldown. The sword is a lot of fun to use, and it should be a primary form of attack, but locking basic slashing behind a cooldown limits its use. Obviously, the enhanced sword abilities and even the ranged sword slashes should be behind a cooldown to prevent overpowered spamming of abilities, but I just feel like basic melee slashing should have just been its own move. It would really encourage dashing into enemies and pushing forward towards combat, and also provide a technical and fun way to keep combos going. Imagine how stylistic and flashy it could be if you could switch back and forth between guns and swords. It would feel more like a first-person Devil May Cry in that way. When you're able to use the sword as it is now, it feels great and is flashy as hell, but I just wish that the basic attacks weren't locked behind a cooldown. The last issue I had, and I'm not really sure if this was a bug or a feature, but whenever I died, I would lose all of my XP. Now, this isn't the biggest deal. A lot of games reset your XP upon death, but it would also erase whatever upgrades I had before dying if I died before a checkpoint. So not only would I lose an ability, I would also lose all my XP, so I wouldn't be able to get that ability back upon respawning. I would finish a big fight, the game would checkpoint, and then I would use that XP from the fight to get an ability that I wanted. I would then enter the next room and die to a boss before it would checkpoint. I would respawn with no XP at all and not have the ability that I just earned. So now I have to fight that boss without the ability. It just became really annoying. I played through the demo 3 times and was able to get all of the abilities though, and after getting them all, my XP would stay even after I died. I feel like the game should only punish you once for dying, not twice, but I also feel like this is more of a bug or an issue with the way abilities saved with checkpoints, not an actual feature. Despite these issues, I still had fun playing the Bright Memory Episode 1 demo, and I don't regret buying my game at all. The combat is just a lot of fun, and the final release is still on the top of my most anticipated games for this year. FYQD has a very impressive game on his hands. The game is coming out for PC on Steam and GOG as well as the Xbox Series X later this year. If you're a fan of Uncharted's storytelling and level design, Shadow Warrior's combat, and cute anime girls, then Bright Memory is at least worth checking out. Thanks for tuning in for my quick little review about the Bright Memory demo. I cannot wait for Bright Memory Infinite to come out and see how the final game looks. I will be reviewing that when that comes out, probably in the form of a duel against Lost Soul Aside, which is another game being made by one person. If you liked this little preview review thing, please leave a comment and like the video, and subscribe for more content from us.
Why have these people been hanged here?
Bye.
I hope Wake's okay.